Liam never liked asking. Not for rides, not for favors, not even for attention. As a kid, he got it into his head that people who ask too much hear no more often. So he grew up trying to earn things, by being kind, efficient, predictable. The kind of person no one would have a reason to reject. But life doesn't work that way. At 37, Liam found himself waiting for a message that never came. It wasn't the first time. But this time, he was tired. It wasn't just about someone who disappeared. It was about all the times he felt he had to beg just to be remembered. And that hurt. At work, he always went above and beyond. But the ones who got promoted were the ones who knew how to market themselves. In relationships, he was present, attentive, but almost always ended up hearing, "You're amazing, but..." Liam started asking himself, how many times had he bent too far just to fit into someone else's expectations? How often had he accepted being plan B, a backup, a spare, just to stay visible? And more importantly, how long would he keep confusing being chosen with being tolerated out of pity, habit, or convenience? Sometimes the deepest kind of loneliness isn't being alone. It's being in many places, and still feeling like no one truly chose you. But maybe the problem wasn't him. Maybe the real issue was the belief that, to be loved, valued, noticed, he always had to do more. Liam started noticing patterns. He was always the first to show up, always quick to reply, helping before being asked. And deep down, he hoped that effort would turn into recognition, or at least, reciprocation. But it rarely did. At work, he delivered results beyond expectations. But when it came time for big decisions, he was overlooked. In his friend group, he organized everything. But in the more intimate talks, he was left out. In relationships, he led with an open heart, but somehow always ended up in dynamics where he loved more. It wasn't neediness, it was hope. The hope that one day, someone would look at him and say, "It's you. No doubt. You're the one I want here." But no one ever said that. And the more he gave, the more his value seemed to shrink, as if his presence were so guaranteed that it stopped being special. As if being constantly available made people stop noticing him altogether. He began to wonder if he was asking too much of life, or offering too much to people who didn't know how to receive. One random weekend, he chose not to message anyone, not to start a conversation, not to remind anyone of his existence. And no one noticed, no notification, no, "You've been quiet." No, it hit hard. But it was also a sign. Liam realized, with a quiet ache, that maybe the problem wasn't him. Maybe the real mistake was insisting on staying in spaces where his presence had never truly been seen, and his absence went unnoticed. Some people go through life thinking they need to earn love, that they need to win attention, prove their worth, always show how useful they are, as if being at peace with someone depended on having a flawless emotional resume. The truth is, many people learn to overgive just to secure a place, to be essential so they wouldn't be discarded, to perform roles no one asked for, just to avoid the risk of being forgotten. But what's the cost? It does cost something. The price builds up slowly. The exhaustion of always holding things together, the frustration of not being truly seen, and the growing fear that if you stop trying, everything falls apart. Because deep down, the feeling is this: you're only loved as long as you're giving. Liam no longer wanted to be chosen for his usefulness. He wanted to be chosen for his presence, for the ease, for the comfortable silence, for simply existing, not for serving. And that's not pride. It's not entitlement. It's dignity. Because any relationship that only survives through one-sided effort isn't a relationship. It's dependence. It's imbalance. It's a well that only empties, never fills. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is to stop chasing, to leave the phone alone, to step out of the group chat, to choose yourself first, just to see who still chooses you afterward. Liam didn't flip the switch overnight. He didn't wake up feeling empowered or go cutting ties like someone doing an emotional spring cleaning. But he started changing small things, and those small things changed everything. He stopped replying instantly to messages that always came loaded with urgency, but never with warmth. He began to say, "Not today," without over-explaining. He started noticing who only reached out when they needed something, and quietly pulled away. At first it felt empty, as if he were giving up the little he had, but soon he realized that what he was losing was just dead weight. He saw that being easy to deal with didn't mean he was being treated well, that always being available didn't make him more loved, just more convenient, and that those who only chose him when no one better was around weren't really choosing him at all. That's when a real shift began. Liam started claiming his space better, not with arrogance, but with presence. He began asking himself, "Do I actually enjoy being here? Does this conversation nourish me? Does this person choose me, or merely tolerate me?" And when the answers felt uncomfortable, he stepped back. For the first time, he began to feel like he was living a life designed by him, not shaped to please others. And even in moments of doubt, there was a new kind of calm, the peace of not needing to beg to be seen. Liam's changes didn't go unnoticed. People who were used to his accessible, helpful, always available version began to act surprised. Some drifted away in silence. Others confronted him. "You've changed. That's not how you used to be. Seems like you think you're better than us now." Liam heard all of it with a tight chest, because deep down he was still afraid of seeming selfish, of disappointing people, of losing the few connections he had. But he knew. The cost of living just to please others was far too high, and it wasn't worth paying. It was revealing to see how some relationships crumbled the moment he stopped bending, as if the friendship, affection, or respect had only existed while he was sacrificing himself. All it took was a change in the dynamic, and the truth came out. At the same time, other connections started to appear, quieter, lighter, more genuine. People who weren't scared off by silence, who didn't demand explanations, who stayed, even when he made no effort to be chosen. And that felt like freedom. Liam realized that losing those who were only around out of convenience was actually a gain, and that every bit of space that opens when someone walks out can become space where he finally fits. It was no longer about pleasing or impressing. It was about aligning, letting what stayed in his life be truly mutual. No games, no manipulation, no affection wrapped in competition. And maybe for the first time, he didn't fear solitude. Liam started to notice how the most transformative moments didn't come with fireworks. They lived in small, almost invisible decisions he used to make on autopilot, but now made with intention. He turned down an invite to an event that always drained him, one he'd attended every year just to keep up appearances. And for the first time, he spent that evening at home, reading a book he chose without hurry, sipping hot tea, in silence. And it was good. He started replying only when he had something real to say, not just to avoid seeming distant. He stopped laughing at jokes that made him uncomfortable, stopped apologizing for enjoying his own company, and most importantly, he stopped accepting emotional crumbs as if they were feasts. He also began to look at himself with more kindness. That critical voice was still there, the one asking, "Am I overreacting?" But now it didn't lead. It was just background noise. Liam started to realize that self-love wasn't just a feel-good phrase for social media. It was a practice. It was going to bed at night with the sense that he hadn't betrayed himself that day, that his choices aligned with the person he wanted to become. There were hard days. Days when he missed people who had treated him badly. Days when he wanted to run back to his old self, the version that reshaped itself to fit into other people's worlds. But he took a deep breath and stayed right where he was. It was like training a new muscle. It hurts at first, but then it strengthens you. Those small victories began to build something larger, a quiet, solid, unshakable foundation. Liam no longer lived to be chosen. Now he chose as well. With time, Liam understood that a big part of adult life is unlearning what we were silently taught, like the belief that love must be earned, that someone else's attention is a prize, that affection needs to be deserved. But who made those rules? who convinced us that being loved is some kind of reward for performance. He started seeing relationships more clearly. He noticed that people who truly like you don't demand performances. They don't expect a show. They don't measure your words or put you on trial all the time. People who like you just do, and it feels light. He also realized that his worth wasn't measured by how much he could endure or how much he could give. It was in how well he could preserve himself, choose himself, protect himself from places where he had to beg for crumbs while offering a feast. Growing up, he saw, wasn't about becoming hard. It was about sharpening focus, about knowing where to stay and where the best move was to walk away, quietly. And that's when Liam noticed something beautiful. He no longer felt rejected when someone walked away. It didn't hurt like before, because now he knew that not every absence is a loss. Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's a blessing. Liam didn't become someone else. He was still kind, still thoughtful. But now he had boundaries. And those boundaries didn't push people away. They attracted the ones who truly wanted to stay. Because real love doesn't require you to kneel or submit an emotional resume. It happens in eye contact, in the kind of "I'm staying" that doesn't have to be begged for, in the "I'm here" that comes without instructions, without pressure, without conditions. You deserve to be chosen without having to beg, without having to shrink, without having to reshape yourself until you nearly disappear. We grow up thinking that love must be won, that recognition must be dug up, that to be seen you must constantly wave your arms. But one day, you understand. Being truly chosen doesn't depend on noise. It depends on truth. If you have to justify your place in someone's life all the time, that place was never yours. If you have to wear yourself out just to be remembered, you're not being loved. You're being tolerated. And that's not love. So what is love then? Love is when your presence isn't a burden, when your absence is noticed, when you can be whole, with flaws, with pauses, with silence, and still be embraced. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be respected. And for that, the first step is treating yourself with that same respect. Stay where it makes sense. Leave where it doesn't. And understand that self-love doesn't push others away. It only pushes away the ones who were never really there. If this story spoke to you, like it did to Liam, give it a like. Share it with someone who might need the reminder. And tell us in the comments, have you ever found yourself trying to be chosen by someone who never truly saw you? Or have you already had the courage to choose yourself?